In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Every year on the Sunday on the Sunday of our fall parish assembly meeting, which is usually in October, I offer my priest report in the church as a sermon I like to call the state of our parish. The experience of today, Sunday, November 10th, in the life of our parish is actually a microcosm of the state of our community. We have a full church, as we do every Sunday of the year. We don't all fit in the church, and some people are worshiping in the Cremula Center. There was a long line for Holy Communion. The choir sang beautifully. There were a lot of young men serving in the altar. Today is also a historical day in the life of our community because there were 6 chrismations prior to the Divine Liturgy, and there will be 2 adult baptisms this afternoon. This is the most number of adults who have ever come into our faith in this parish on a single day. All of them are under age 50, and all but one is under age 30. There is a renaissance going on in many Orthodox communities, a wave of young people who are either finding Christianity for the first time in the Orthodox Church, or who have experienced other Christian denominations and are coming into our church on a pilgrimage to discover the most historically consistent faith in the Christian world. The Orthodoxy 101 class this past January had 35 people, and the one we completed in October had 42. We've set a record for chrismations in our parish this year with 18 so far, and maybe a couple more before the end of the year. We've also had 5 adult baptisms, so 23 adults have joined our church this year, most of whom had no connection with this parish or the Orthodox Church a year ago. We've had multiple retreats this year, one for Philoptochos, a men's retreat, 2 young adult retreats, 3 Goya lock-ins. Our Hope Joy has had multiple retreats. Our Joy Tweens groups has enjoyed multiple outings. Sunday school has well over 100 students. By the end of the year, we will have celebrated over 100 divine liturgies in our parish this year, with nearly 200 total services and sacraments. There have been over 80 Bible studies this year between me and Father John. Our monthly young adult discussion group has over 30 people each month. Goya meets at least once a month. And our monthly men's group is meeting tonight. And during Lent, we had our annual Lenten dinner series, which was well attended. We still participate in community outreach the 3rd Sunday of each month. And if you fill in the hundreds of pastoral calls, hospital visits, and confessions, you can see that the calendar is filled month after month with ministries, opportunities to learn, worship, come together as a community, and to serve. This year we hired a new administrative assistant in March. The monthly messenger has greatly improved, I hope you will agree, and there is more efficiency in the office with Ellie aboard. Deb has been our bookkeeper for 11 years, and in September, Maria became our full-time ministry coordinator and chanter. Felix has been here for 11 years as our custodian. Tara and Ruth do a great job leading our choir. Father John has been assigned temporarily as the interim proistomenos in Sarasota, which will go through at least Pascha of 2025, I'm being told. He is thankfully still active in our parish, doing Bible study, confessions, pastoral visits, and when he is able to sub for me, a weekday service or a sacrament here and there. While most non-Orthodox parishes of our size have a full-time staff significantly larger than ours, our team is working very hard every day so that we can enjoy not only the beautiful Sunday Divine Liturgy and other things that happen on Sundays, but so that we can enjoy the many things that happen here all throughout the week. We have many dedicated volunteers, from our parish council to Philoptochos, Sunday school teachers, choir members, ushers, altar boys, and ministry heads. The church is you, the people, the body of Christ, and the church cannot function or spread the gospel without the work of many people. The 2 hurricanes in late September and early October adversely affected our parishioners as well as our office complex. And on that note, if you need some aid, there is aid available from our metropolis. If you're having a hard time figuring out the form, I'm happy to pass along the name and number of Presbytera Evie Kaplanis, who is chairing this event. She can help walk you through the form. But if there are people who need aid, there is significant aid available. Just apply for it. If you need the link, just text me and I'll send it to you. Through the generosity of many gifts from outside of our parish, we've been able to send some relief to many of those affected. It will not come anywhere near covering the financial costs, but we hope that these gestures are helpful and that they comfort you in some way, that you know that your church is concerned for you at all times, and specifically in your challenging ones. We have been temporarily displaced from our offices, nursery, Zacharias room, bookstore, and meeting rooms. Repairs are ongoing. A large percentage of the materials and labor has been donated, for which we are very grateful. We thank you for your patience as we negotiate this temporary inconvenience. We haven't missed a service. Most of our ministries are back as before, and we are making it with slight alterations to coffee hour and a few other things. Our parish is at a crossroad. By definition, arrival at a crossroad is handled in three ways. There is an evaluation of options of which way to go, there is a decision to go, and then there is the actual go. Two events have happened almost simultaneously. We are coming to the end of the lease of our tenant, and we are exploding population-wise as a parish. Our office building, even before the hurricane damage, was on its last legs. We don't have the capacity to have many ministries we need and that we want to have because the tenant occupies our property 5 days a week from 6:30 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. We can't have icons in our Sunday school classrooms. Greek school is limited to Saturdays. We have no meeting space. The tenant has badly damaged our property and continues to do so on a daily basis. None of this is new news. We've been talking about it for the past several years, especially in the last year as the lease is winding down to its eventual end in June of 2025. There are two ways to go, backward or forward. To fulfill our mission and to serve the needs of our parish, we are choosing the option to go forward. The options to expand the church are limited based on setbacks on the property. We have presented plans to expand the church, remodel the school into a ministry building, update the Carmelist Center, and give a needed facelift to our grounds. A covered walkway between the church and ministry building is part of the plan. So is an outdoor pavilion, added parking, and some added green space. Our facilities need better handicap access. The playground needs updating. The parking lot needs a fresh coat of asphalt, and our landscaping could use some work. The remodeled church will have a real narthex, bathrooms, handicap ramps in front of our church, and 200 additional seats. The ministry building will have multiple rooms that can be used by our ministries, a small fellowship hall, dedicated classrooms, and professional-looking office space. Our stewardship is such that it practically covers the budget, and we thank you for that. We do not need a tenant in order to pay the bills. There is the possibility of renting out the building on the back of our property, the small house back there, it's actually not that small, it's 3,000 square feet, to a professional business for a short term. What a vision if one day that can be a gathering place for our youth, a youth center for our over 100 children that comprise our community at present, and that we have no tenant at all. A quiet phase of active fundraising is underway. A vision committee has been meeting for over a year. A full-fledged capital campaign will launch in 2025. These are exciting times in our church. We have the opportunity to make a statement, our generation. We continually remember and honor the sacrifices of our founding families. And I would like to welcome back Christine Skirtis, the last of our founders, who has been away for a couple months and celebrated her 100th birthday, which we are going to do formally in the next couple of weeks. Welcome back, Christine. It is now our time, our turn, to take up the mantle of vision, combined with sacrifice, that they demonstrated for us. It is time for us to make the necessary improvements that will set us on the course for the next 40 years. We can now move forward, unburdened from the debts of the old day school, unfettered by the restrictions placed on us by the lease we have had with our tenants. The gospel lesson today is the well-known parable of the Good Samaritan. We know the story of the man beaten and robbed and left by the side of the road. Who is that man today? He is the person who has been wounded in some way in life. Perhaps he is spiritually wounded by shame over sins, or frightened as he gets older and reflects on his mortality. Perhaps he has lost his purpose, or is lost in general because he has not yet found the joy of Jesus Christ. Perhaps he is a neighbor who lives in this immediate area who is neither Greek nor Orthodox, but who can benefit from a ministry of our church. We remember the words of Jesus, who told his servants to go to the highways and hedges to compel people to come to his banquet. I was so proud of some of our young people who on the Sunday after Hurricane Milton went into the surrounding neighborhoods not to preach the gospel or hand out flyers, but to rake leaves and sweep sidewalks. Without knowing it, they actually preached the gospel, and they lived out the lesson from today that our neighbor is everyone, and that day our neighbor hadn't been hurt by robbers, but hurt by a vicious storm. Again, we see people at the side of the road every day, and what do we do with that? Do we pass by on the other side, too distracted or too absorbed with our own things? Or do we pause and say, I could make a difference today for someone? The Good Samaritan tended to his wounded neighbor in several ways, as best as he was able. In the first instance, he used oil and wine to tend to the man's wounds. He had a skill that he could use. Next, he had a donkey at his disposal. He set the man on his donkey, choosing to walk himself because he realized he could walk, but the wounded man could not. It didn't matter that it was a Samaritan and that the Jews and Samaritans were sworn enemies. If we are all created in the image and likeness of God, it is our human barriers that cause us to see differences in one another. He offered his valuable time to the man, staying with him at the inn and taking care of him for the rest of the day and into the night. Time perhaps is our most valuable commodity. It's a thing we can't get more of. Many gospel scholars say that the inn represents the church in the parable. It is the first place we should go when we are wounded. And the oil and wine represent the sacraments of Holy Unction and Holy Communion, the healing medicine that we find only in the church. The next day, the Good Samaritan had to continue his journey. Perhaps he had a family to get back to or a job to do. The parable doesn't tell us. He didn't have any more time, though. However, he gave the innkeeper some money, and he asked that he take care of the man. He could not do any more, but he provided the means for the man to be taken care of. This represents your financial contribution to the church, the inn. You provide the means that keep the church open, staffed, and functioning when you make your financial stewardship contribution. You will allow our facilities to expand and serve even better when you contribute to the upcoming capital campaign. And by the way, we want to hear from you. There's a survey that went out this week, and I hope you'll take 5 minutes and fill that out and return it to us by the end of the week. The challenge for our church is that we need a bigger inn to accommodate more wounded people. And we each stand in the position of the Good Samaritan. What will we do for these wounded people? What about when we are wounded? What kind of respite will you find at the inn? Many of us will jump eagerly at this project. We will step forward and rejoice at this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to do something special in the life of our parish. Some of us will step forward perhaps with some anxiety. I'm sure that the Good Samaritan had some anxiety. He approached a sworn enemy to help. He offered 2 denarii to the innkeeper. That would have represented 2 days of work for him. We don't know how deep his pockets were, but something inside of him said, go, do it, help the man, provide the means to help even your enemy. Some of you will step forward slowly after careful and hopefully prayerful consideration to join in the mission. Some of us will be distracted like the priest and the Levite and pass by on the other side. They might have pretended to not hear the message or think it is not for them or think someone else will answer the call instead. Some will hear the message and choose not to participate. And sadly, I know some will oppose and probably be very vocal about it. They won't understand the gospel reading. They won't want progress. They won't understand the purpose of the church or the meaning of this parable, or understand our responsibility as stewards of the gospel and servants of God to tend to the wounded, to go to the highways and hedges. They will think that their good fortune is theirs rather than God's blessing on them. And they, like all of us, will have to stand before God and make an explanation for what they did or didn't do. By God's grace, your prayers, your patience, and your forgiveness, I have been blessed to serve here now for over 20 years. I hope I will be able to serve for many more. For many years of my life, I feel like I was the priest or Levite in this parable. I saw the man on the side of the road but pretended not to see him and hoped no one else would notice that I didn't see him. I was too busy, distracted, and self-absorbed, and instead of running to him, I slinked by on the other side. For the past many years of my life, I have tried to be a good Samaritan, and sometimes I have been good and sometimes I have failed. As I get older in my life and in my priesthood, I see the church as the inn, and I identify more with the innkeeper. I eagerly await for the Samaritans to bring in the wounded people. I want to hang a sign on the inn that says, open for all wounded people. However, in the case of our parish, the inn is full. We don't have the proper rooms. We need more rooms at the inn, and eventually we will need more innkeepers. We know that the world is a busy place. Even the best of Samaritans have limited time. So what we really need in order to fulfill this parable is the denarii, to add to the inn, and the denarii to bring in more innkeepers, whether they are priests or lay workers. The lawyer in the parable asked Jesus, "Who is my neighbor?" And the answer was, "Everyone is your neighbor, even your enemy." There is no limit to who our neighbors are. We have 400 families in our parish at present and thousands more in our immediate area. If we are really to love our neighbors ourselves, that means we make our neighbor as much a priority as we make ourselves. We care for his or her well-being as we care for our own well-being. And as for loving God with all our soul, our heart, our strength, and our mind, that means loving God with our time, our talent, and our treasure as well. For as Jesus says in Matthew 21, "Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." We actually lead with our treasure, and our hearts follow there. So this is where our church is. We have decided to cross the road, knowing that there are many wounded people on the other side. We have decided to care for ourselves and for others by creating a ministry building. We have decided to expand the inn, the church building, so that we have more room to take care of one another. What we need now are the eyes of the Good Samaritan to see the opportunity before us. We need the generosity of the Good Samaritan to give sacrificially but joyfully to the work of the inn. And what we need most is the courage of the Good Samaritan to see the enemy not as an obstacle to be feared, but as an opportunity to be embraced. Thank you for listening to my report. If you have any questions, I will be happy to take them at the meeting.